Welcome to the Rise Network podcast show, a podcast dedicated to help you reach your dream lifestyle through investing in real estate. We're going to be sitting down with new, intermediate, and experienced investors to talk all about real estate and how it has changed their lives. If you're looking to scale your portfolio or even just get into real estate investing, you're in the right place. Make sure to tune in. Hello, everyone. You are listening to the Rise Real Estate Investing Podcast with your host, Austin Ye and
Mayu. What's going on, everybody? Austin, how was your night last night? What time did you get home?
I got not too late. I want to say I got home around 10:20. We're at a networking event down at Dave & Buster's in Oakville. For those who don't know, Thomas Larini. We didn't have him on the podcast yet. We need to have him soon.
Yeah, we got to have Thomas on here.
Can't believe we forgot about that. But he hosted the event. He came down from the States, hosted it down in Oakville. It was a great time. We had 50 investors out there?
More. There was a lot
Probably
of people,
more.
Man. It was pretty packed. I didn't even realize there was the second half of the room. I was lingering near the front part, and then I realized, I'm like, yo, where the heck's Austin? I was like, where are you guys? And then I see you guys all in the back. I'm like, what the fuck? Had no idea it went that far. So,
and it was a lot of people that we never met in person before. We had there are a lot of investors who started the last year and a half, 2 years, since COVID, and we've never met them before in any event, right? So it's finally refreshing to meet people face to face. And we met some podcast fans as well. So shout out to you all who listened to the podcast and reached out to Mayu and I at the event.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I think it was just great. Good conversations happen in kind of rooms like this, right? And it's where no one really has any particular ask or want, right? You just kind of updating each other on what you're doing. And you just realize that everyone is doing so much shit, and you just kind of propel yourself further, right? And of course, there's a little bit of business talk that goes down as well, right? So Austin, how's the last week been for you?
Yeah. So as the podcast fans are the audience is going to hear, I'm actually not going to be in this episode today. Mayu was gracious enough to run it because over the past couple of days, it's totally been kind of a shit show. So there's a lot going on the wholesaling side of things. So we work with bird dogs, as I mentioned before. Bird dogs being people who kind of send us over leads. We handle the negotiation, guide them along the way, and dispo the deal. So it's a deal that we dispoed, and the seller didn't want to close on it, and they were doing anything they can to avoid it, avoiding responses with the assignee's lawyer. So I rarely ever talk to the assignee's lawyer. There's no reason for me to, but I was on 30-40-minute calls with the assignee's lawyer, spoke to the assignee, spoke to my lawyer, tried to figure out what was going on, how we can make things work, drafting up text messages to speak to the seller because the seller was ducking and dodging, and it was just a nightmare. The seller did not want to close clearly. Had to change it.
Seller's remorse. Yeah.
Had seller's remorse, and this was the seller's not new to the game. They have 4 or 5 investment properties, so they know how it works, right? Yeah, and they've had built-in equity. They bought this thing probably $200K less than what they're selling it for, and didn't do any work to it.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. And really it becomes a lose-lose-lose situation, right? For us, we lose because obviously we're not making that fee. We take a reputational hit. On the bird dogs perspective, they work hard to get this deal. It didn't close. So they lose on making money. And from the assignee's perspective, they got private money for this deal, right? So they're obligated to pay that interest nonetheless. And also their lawyer fees. So that was a nightmare, just sorting that out. But that's my long excuse as to why.
Is it closing or what? What happened?
Yeah. So it is closing now. We sent a text message to the seller. I could just, if you want, I could read it out and block the name just so people have an idea how to deal with these sort of situations, right? Hey, let's say Bob, I was advised the deal didn't close today. I was hoping we can resolve any issues here so we can close the property. It appears your lawyer advised not to sign an undertaking because the payout statement wasn't received by Manulife. So for those who don't know, an undertaking basically means, from my understanding, that you're going to pay off the mortgage after closing on the property, right? We're not assuming that. We're okay with waiting until Manulife sends the document before you sign the undertaking. However, typical closing process requires an undertaking just so we know the money will be used to discharge the mortgage and there won't be a mortgage registered on our property upon closing. Our lawyer has also completed the entire statement of adjustments to help facilitate closing. This is a job that's supposed to be done by your lawyer. Mm-hmm. Also, we foregoed rent adjustments over $400. This guy didn't want to adjust for rents. He's like, no, right? Like, and that's illegal. Yeah. And I was like, we're foreclosed that. That's not standard protocol, but we are committed to do this deal with you. So we're okay to eat that cost. We're also going to fully pay for your legal fees. We have the cash ready to close. Our lawyer has proof of that. We wanted to sign all the paperwork and move forward. However, the undertaking form wasn't signed. Again, we're willing to wait until your lawyer receives the payout statement before you sign. Even if it takes a couple more days, we're willing to extend. We're hoping to move forward to close this deal with you. I hope you are as well. Please give me a call so we can figure out a resolution, as I prefer to chat with you directly versus getting lawyers involved. For my experience, when lawyers get involved, things are going to get messy. Things are going to cost a lot of money. So I always prefer to work things out directly with the seller to find a resolution. So I'm basically being nice, but also saying like, look, I'm going to take action if it comes down to it. Let's not push it there.
And then what happened? you gotta tell us what happened.
So he dodged that. Like, he didn't respond or call, but shortly after, his lawyer responded to the signee's lawyer saying that they're looking to extend and till they get the payout statement, then they're willing to close. So yes, that deal has been saved. I don't know if it was because of that text message, but I'm fairly certain he did not want to close the property. Like, there were clear signs of it the week or two before. But if that text pushed him over the edge to make that decision, then I feel pretty proud of my ability to negotiate.
That's awesome, man.
I was going to ask you how you're doing, but I've just like hijacked it. I had to hijack this entire preamble because I'm not featured on the episode.
No, it was a good story. I think, we've obviously had our own share of buyers trying to pull out and sellers trying to pull out. And I've had mortgage clients that are in like messy situations with like buyers and sellers on the other side. And there's so many people involved in a transaction. And yeah, it's always going to get messy, right? Like, I don't think I've had like 1 or 2 like clean closings, where like there's no issues, no extensions.
We're like multiple property.
Yeah. And then eventually you just become immune to it, right? You're just like, I need an extension. Okay, what's the fee? $100, $200. Cool. Let's do it. And
so here's the issue is that people try to click the nuclear button and try to sue or throw threats. And that is not what any party wants to hear, right? Like, you start getting defensive. So the approach that we always take is try to be the nice guy. Try to point out, look, we're doing ABC for you. Like, we want to work with you. Like, let's figure this out because we don't want this to go to lawyers, right? Like, and when people see that, they're willing to be more receptive to it because like, oh, okay, like this person is understanding. They want to just reach out and figure out a solution instead of like launching nuclear warfare. And that approach typically always outperforms just emailing via a lawyer saying, look, we're going to sue the shit out of you. That becomes an issue altogether because lawyers make money on both sides. Like, both clients end up losing.
Yeah, 100%. I think everyone in a transaction has a responsibility to make sure that it closes on time and timely as well, right? But like, everyone will try to punt it to one person or another. Like, whether it's a realtor punting it to mortgage agent, mortgage punting it to a lawyer punting it back to the realtor, it just keeps going in circles. So sometimes the best course of action is literally just pick up the phone and talk directly with the buyer or seller. It's whether or not you can get access to them is kind of the challenge, especially if you're dealing with the MLS, but off market, it's all good. All right, guys. So for today's episode, we had Dhiraj on the podcast. Dhiraj he's got a great story, immigrating to Canada and kind of building up his portfolio and kind of the different types of properties that he started off with and what he's doing today, right? Near the end of the podcast is definitely a great discussion on kind of the cash for keys strategies that he implemented into his own like portfolio, some of the hurdles and some of the headaches that he dealt with. There's a lot of different insights that both of us, myself and Dhiraj. I realized also when you're not on the episode, I end up talking way more. So I feel like both of us just kind of shared a lot of insight in our own respective journeys and kind of lessons and things like that we learned along the way. Hopefully you guys enjoy the episode. Make sure you comment and subscribe. All right, everyone. So this week, it's just me and Dhiraj here. So Dhiraj, for all of our guests, usually Austin does this part of the introduction, is why it sounds a little bit weird. But Dhiraj, for all of our guests, why don't you give them a quick kind of introduction of yourself?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Mayu. I was really an admirer of this podcast and always had a dream of coming here. The good part is I'm here. Yeah.
Well, we're glad to have you on, man. I think a lot of our guests, because we've been doing this podcast now almost for 1 year. So a lot of our guests that started with us early on have now evolved to kind of, buy a few properties, right? Similar to yourself. So what's your backstory, Dhiraj?
Yeah. So nothing much. Like I feel I have like a real standard immigrant story. I moved to this country on my PR. I was in US before this. The US did not like immigrants, so
You went to school in the US?
Yeah, I did my master's there, and then I was doing a job for almost 3 years there. Then I moved back to India, and then I came here in 2018 October. And as soon as I came in, right, like real estate was always my focus from my as soon as I was started making money, I would say, right, like I always wanted something, and my family is into real estate. They own properties in India, so this was a natural thing that came to me. So as soon as I came to this country, I put my first offer in like 6 months.
Nice.
Got a deal in 10 months, closed on it in like 11 months. So that was like my first deal.
What year was this? Like when did you come?
It was 2019. So things were not going that crazy, right? I came in like 2018 October. So 19 was November was deal that I closed. And then I got to stabilize that property. Like it was a townhouse in Brampton, an old build. Like the idea was there, right? Like I did not know Burr, or I did not know, all those terms or strategies.
Yeah.
But the idea was always there that buy something that's undervalued, stay in it for a few years, then renovate it, and then, try to gain that equity. And that's what I did. I got the property, did few renovations, and just sat on it for a few months. And then COVID happened, and then I started, like, I had a lot of free time to just look into my second deal. And that's how I started doing like my research as to how I can buy my second, right? Like pretty much with the first one, I was new immigrant, so I did not have credit or neither the cash, right? So when I went to the banks, they said 500 is the max that you can buy something for.
That was for your first one.
Yeah, that was for my first one. And I was living in Brampton back then, so I thought this is the place that I want to be, because I didn't have a car when I was doing this. So so that was the thing, that was the idea behind it. So I just wanted to buy something nearby, and the idea was to rent it out and just live on that money. Like I would build up the equity. I didn't need a house that was like a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom. So I was like, I'll rent it out, get the rent for like 3-bedroom house and live in like 1-bedroom house kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think there's something there, right? Like I think a lot of us as real estate investors, there's two things, right? One is we just kind of end up as accidental real estate investors, right? So like most of us don't start off with this huge ambition of, we're going to build this huge empire of real estate properties or anything like that. It's just, we buy a property because we're passionate about it. We like real estate. We need a house to live, whatever it is, different tethers, right? So we buy it. We see the fruits of the labor that we put into it, right? Like you turned around the townhouse. I'm sure you saw the real estate markets continue to kind of skyrocket, the value and equity that you build. And then you kind of reach this hurdle, right? And that's the point at which you kind of become an investor. It's where the moment you reach your first hurdle and you figure out, how do I overcome this, right? So for you, it might have been going to a different market. It might have been selling off something. It might have been increasing your income, whatever that hurdle is. That for the most part, a lot of people in the GTA, it'll be something related to financing, right? But you reach that first hurdle, and then when you solve that and you make, you got to do whatever you got to do to surpass that. Now the world just feels like it's your oyster, and that that real estate empire seems like so much closer, right? So before we get into what you did later on, I just like to take this opportunity. So being a newcomer to Canada, what are the hurdles? Because like I'll be honest, I've never faced that, right? So what are the hurdles?
So the first one is like 100% is your down payment, right? Then there's a big curve on doing your market research, right? Mm-hmm. It takes you almost 6 months to just find a place for you to live. Then being your job, then getting a car. Like Canada without car is hard. And if you're living in GTA, the insurance will kill you regardless of what car you get, right? So yeah, like financing is the big one. And then the second challenge would be, finding the network, right? Like I think now it has become very easy, right? Like you have so many groups out there. But when I came in, I didn't even knew that I was supposed to look on the Facebook for groups, right? So that is one thing. Then like depending on which country you come from, right? Like in India, we never take mortgages for buying a property. So getting heads wrap around the idea of, owning something, but it's technically owned by a bank, right? That's a foreign thing, and there are a lot of things, right? Like learning would be the major one, then financing, and just as soon as you get into these two things, right? Like then finding a property. I think regardless of where you start, like first property should be a small one that gets your hand dirty, right? Like I felt that and I did that. I'm glad I did that, right? Like and whatever you do, how many precautions you take, you're gonna find something that you were not prepared for, and that's a good opportunity to learn. So
yeah, very true. And like even me still to this day, you think you see it all, and then I just bought a property where the tenant decides he wants to have a little grow up in the back, right? I'm like, oh, like this is my first time dealing with, marijuana grow up in like sheds, and like he's like, siphoning the hydro and stuff like that. It's just like super annoying, right? But there's always going to be some sort of new lesson that's always coming down the road, right? So you bought that townhouse, and so I'm curious what led you to, because you eventually pivoted to more, let's call it like value markets or like cash flow markets, right?
Yeah.
What made you decide to pivot there?
So doing that in November, then I took like few months to, stabilize that property, find good tenants, solve some of the issues in the property. At the same time, like me, my wife, we both migrated here. So she did not have the job initially. So she got job at the start of COVID, right? Like that year. So as soon as I went to bank said 500, my first property, I was done. So second, she got a job, but the problem was she did not have the credit,
right,
nor the down payment, right? We knew that based on her job, we could close a property, but banks would not lend the same 500 that they lent us. And at that point, in those 4 months, right, I realized very quickly, my Brampton property was cash flowing 500. That is meaning not covering any maintenance or anything, right? Like
it's like mortgage and property tax. Yeah, which like you live there as well, right? So that's a little bit different of a game, but yeah.
No, I did not live there. So that's the thing. So that's what I said, right? Like I bought a three bedroom house, I rented it out, and I was renting somewhere else. So I was building on the equity.
While you live somewhere else for a little bit cheaper, and you kind of slummed it out. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Very, very common strategy that a lot of guys do. So yeah.
Yeah. So by that point, right, like I had, and since I was okay living off my salary. So in the next 6 months, we were able to save like $50,000, and we had something, we were able to build some credit. We didn't know how much. So I was continuously talking to banks, and like I was just trying to make a deal happen in GTA. But deep down, right, like my real estate mind was not letting me do that, right? Like it was not letting me take that kind of a risk. That I was seeing house realtors were showing, oh, you can house hack it, rent out the basement or live in the basement. You pay half the rent. But I was always like, what if one of us lose a job, right? We'll not be able to cover the mortgage. So it was not making any sense for us. And that's when I was doing my research continuously. And I got around one of the podcasts that was of GTA. Then I found somebody in GTA who had like built up $1 million, $30 million portfolio in less than 10 years. And I was curious as to how they did it, right? So I was just doing my research, and that's when I found Matt McKeever, and that led me to finding Austin.
Once you find like one person in this ecosystem, you just end up like stumbling on like so many other names. It's pretty crazy, right? So hold on. So one thing that was really important that I think we just kind of skated over is you guys were living on just your income, and I'm sure I don't know how much of your income you were saving versus spending, but you were essentially just fully saving your wife's income, right? Therefore, you had a super high natural savings rate. So forget the burr. If you have a naturally high savings rate, you'll always just be able to keep, accumulating down payments and just buying real estate properties. And then on top of that, if your real estate cash flows on its own as well, it just keeps snowballing bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So that's what that's exactly how I structured my finances as well, right? Like when I was, growing, all of my money from my paycheck went into like some sort of renovation or like some sort of like bullshit like real estate expense that pops up last minute, right? So that's super important, man. I think you guys nailed it there. So where did you buy your second property?
So the second property, I was looking into all the markets, and then Windsor came to I was able to find Windsor, right? And that's when through some videos, through some podcasts, I was able to find one realtor that I just quickly schedule a call with his associate, and that's where I got my. He walked me through few properties. I had the money. The problem with me is if my money is sitting in the bank, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I feel my money is like my workers, right? And I'm being the manager, right? So
Yeah.
you don't like your workers sitting around. So
Yeah, very true.
and the property was like really under 300,000. We had 60,000 already saved up. It was making sense for us to buy a duplex for like
Right.
less than 300. And from GTA, right, at that point, and then I was not looking for a burr, right? But
Yeah.
the property became a burr. That's a different story. So I was looking for a normal property without any renovation, just get in, do normal touch-ups. Even at that time, I was not confident as to what a burr is, how to do it, right? So we got a property for 280, a duplex that had like a finished basement, but the height was like a bit less, right? So
Yeah, like a non-conforming.
non-conforming kind of.
Yeah.
So that's we were able to buy that, and one of the good part was one of the unit was coming to us as vacant. So we were like quickly paint it and get the market's rent on it, and that's it. Will cash flow like uh, $300-$400 right there.
I think you cash flow a lot more than that, right? If you had one unit, maybe the tenant was paying you like $800 a month or something like that. And then you have another unit where maybe you're getting like $1,200, $1,300, I don't know. And then you had a third unit in the basement, which, that's the kicker on top, right? Like that's just kind of the cherry on top. So I feel like your cash flow numbers are a lot higher, but I don't know.
now. So at that point, because I like, that's the thing, right? Like I did not knew anything. I was just making moves, right? So at that point, the basement and main floor was rented for $850. The top floor I was looking to rent for $1,000. And that's it, right? So I did that. I rented the top unit for $1,000. So $850, I was having like all expenses covered. I was making like 400, 500. Then I put in property management. So I was like $300 there.
Okay. Yep.
But then what happened? Suddenly the main floor tenant, he left he didn't speak English. So we were having tough time communicating with him. When we saw the unit was good. Like I had an inspection done, everything. The day he left, the unit was like really in bad shape. The floors were all roughed up. And then I went there and like I saw it and I got, then I was like, good, right? It's an opportunity for us. Then I got like renovations, quotes and everything. Like, again, this was all happening to me when I was not prepared for it. So first thing was like to find contractors. The second thing was to find money, because I told you, we just saved 50,000, 60,000 and we bought a property without having any money left. The good part is we are like really good savers, right? So in next 2 months, we got like a 20,000 quote. And we said, okay, we need to pay it in like next 2 months, right? So in 4 months, we came up with the next 20,000.
You got to do what you got to do, right? Like, shit's going to happen in real estate, right? And that's the other part that a lot of people don't understand, right? It's just like, look, like if you want this life and if you want to, build wealth in real estate, you just got to deal with the shit that's going to happen. Like there's no easy way to saying it, and you just got to take action and deal with the shit, right? So that's good, man. That's a good learning lesson as well, right? Like the tough part when tenants live there is you're too distracted by like, okay, what's this guy doing? Like, why does he have this like ugly furniture in here? Like, no one's picking up carpets and looking under them to see what's the condition of the flooring. If you like, it's exactly what staging is, right? Like staging, you put beautiful staging in a house, you're not going to notice that the drywall is like poorly painted and like, there's holes here and just missing spots there, right? So that's a good learning lesson. But I mean, I'm sure you still did good, right? Because if you got a duplex at 280 in Windsor, I know what that stuff goes for today. And
so now then I just, renovated it, like rented all the 3 units, still not knowing what a burr is, right? Like still hearing about it, not knowing what to do. So I renovated it, I rented it, and just like sat there for like 3-4 months. And then like I was struggling with it, right? Like I was struggling with money because I had everything invested, not able to pull anything back.
Right.
So there's a weird thing happened, right? Like I think Austin started like 1-to-1 coaching back then, like 1 hour calling things.
Yeah.
So I got on a call with him for like an hour, and he told me, you know what, you're supposed to do this, and that's it, right? Like he just gave me a roadmap to how to pull money out of things, right?
Yeah.
The biggest problem was I was out of money and I wanted to scale, right? So he said, refinance the Windsor property, sell off your Brampton property, and that's it. Like he just told me those two things, and deep down somewhere I knew I had to sell the Brampton property, but I like being emotional, being my first property, and all those things, right? It was getting hard for me.
And none of us ever like selling anything off, right? It feels like we're like failing or like we're quitting or something like that. But yeah, go on, man.
Yeah, but then that's exactly what I did. I refinanced my Windsor property, sold off my Brampton property. So by the time of that, right, I realized like in those 1.5 year, I realized that yeah, online videos and everything is good, right? But there are few things that you need to do by yourself, right? Like you need to be in those rooms, you need to learn from experts, right? So I joined a small program where they would teach us renovations. It was by Sarah Larpi, right? Like so I just learned doing renovations from her and through her program, and that helped me with my Brampton property, right? So even I felt like I was way ahead in taking actions, but my learning was really falling back on it, right? So and that what that did that affected my confidence in executing things, right? So I knew I had to renovate the property and sell it on market, but I was like, will I be able to pull off renovations? Will I be able to sell the property? That's where those coaching programs or those mentors help you, right? They tell you what's the like in your mind. You have like a really bad worst case scenario. Even you don't think about a worst case scenario, you just think something is bad, right? And they just put it out for you that what's the worst that's going to happen. So what's the worst that's going to happen? The market has appreciated so much. So I bought the townhouse for 435. So I did like a 15-20,000 renovations in it, and I was looking to sell it in less than 1 year for 80,000 more, right? So that meaning like 520 was what I was looking at. So making like a 50,000 in 1 year, which is pretty standard for a real estate deal.
Decent, yeah. It's a good rate of return though, right?
Yeah. By the time I planned everything and I thought of taking action, the market had appreciated so much. I sold it for 190 more than what I bought.
Nice,
So
that
you
doubled your profit that you were, or doubled or tripled almost.
Tripled my profit that I was looking to get from it, right? So that really helped me with the money that I was struggling for to get my next deals. And at the same time, I'm in this coaching program with Corey. So that gave me like my action plans, right? What I'm supposed to keep doing. So I don't keep falling in this loops of not knowing what is my next steps, right?
Yeah, it's accountability, right? So like it makes you move forward every single week, right? Because a normal person will move forward, right? It's not like, no one wants to be stagnant in life. We'll just move forward at a different pace on our own, right? It's very hard to, David Goggins actually talks about this in a book where he says, we're all kind of operating at 40% of our actual like capacity and output, right? And he actually rips on coaching a little bit. It's actually pretty funny. I was listening to it today. Obviously, I'm a coach in the program as well, right? But it's good to, understand all sides of it. So he just says, as humans, we pay other people to do what we're just essentially too lazy to do, right? It's nothing that you can't do on your own, right? But when someone kicks us in the butt and makes us, do something on a weekly basis, makes us progress, you compress time, right? So at this point, you had sold off your Brampton house, you made a solid profit. And then where do you go from there?
Yeah, so from there, I learned a lot of things, right? Like what it means to make profit on a buy, right? Like how to do that and what all to look into the property. And by that time, my risk tolerance had also grown up. I was really confident at doing a BRRRR. So now I was like, I need to keep looking at properties. And when I got into the Windsor market, right, duplexes were selling for less than 300.
Right.
And the next time I go back in next 6 months, the duplexes were selling like 450.
450, yeah. I was gonna say.
So that's like really crazy, and the rent's not going up
as
like,
much. Yeah.
Not even like $100, right? So it was not making sense for me to do that in that market. Then everybody was talking about Sudbury, so I did the same thing. I went to like I spoke with realtors in Sudbury, did my analysis, but again, at that time, I think we were running into a lot of bidding wars, right? So that was the other thing. I knew my numbers. I was really strict with my numbers, right? I did not want to get into, end up paying more. And the idea was always buy on MLS. Like, I was not comfortable buying something off market
Right.
at that point. So I was like, next deal, just buy it off MLS, control the variables that you can, right? So that was one variable I was comfortable with. So yeah, then I wasted, no, I would not say wasted, but I ended up spending like 4 months really doing that, right? Really analyzing every deal in Windsor, calling all the realtors as soon as the deal hits MLS.
Yeah.
And then same thing with Sudbury, right? Calling up the realtors as soon as the deal hits MLS. And that's when in my mind, I was never tired of doing that, but I also realized that I have ended up using 4 months and the money is sitting in the bank for those 4 months, right?
Right.
So at that time, I was like assuming, and I was always sure that I would only buy like 4 units more, right? That is the risk tolerance that I was ready for my next deal, either 2 duplexes or a 4plex, right?
Got it.
So I calculated my numbers and I saw I had like 50,000 more than what I need to do that.
Okay.
So what I did, I just private lend 35,000 out of it to somebody.
Yeah. I think at that time we actually talked about private lending as well, right? If I'm not
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Okay, so you private loaned out some money. So why'd you decide to do that? Like, why go private lending, right? Because here's the thing, right? Like, private lending is great. I do some private lending obviously as well, but real estate investing is also great, right? So how do you decide between the two?
So it's all about knowing your plan, right? Like, I had all my plans set up, right? So my plan was to buy 4 units. I knew the amount of money I would need. I had excess capital rather than, letting it sit and, just hope for buying a third property, which would not be feasible with my day job, managing 2 renovations at 2 different property.
Right.
So I said, you know what, lend it to somebody and build a network there, right? Like, build a relationship. And that has helped me. Like, I have lent to somebody I know very closely now. And that's the thing, right? Like,
yeah, for sure. No, that makes sense, because you're kind of like buying into his circle or his power team per se, right? And you get access to that individual as well, right? Like, as a lender. So that's a pretty good move, man. That's a good decision. Yeah.
Yeah, and I learned from that a lot, right? Like, again, there will be, you are asking for private money, so right, there will be a lot of people messaging you, texting you, saying, okay, I will private lend to you whenever you ask for money. But as soon as you ask them, they're like, oh, I do not have money right now.
Yeah.
So I had spoken to like the few people, right? You were one of them. The one person I lent, he is one of them. So I had spoken to few people that there's some money going to come my way. As soon as it comes, I'll let you know. It just worked out with him better because the day the money came, he pinged me and it worked out.
Yeah, so, it's all about timing. Yeah, for sure, man. Cool. So you private loan some funds out. And this is the next property is one that I really want to dig into a little bit, right? So why don't you tell our guests, we spent a lot of time on your backstory, but I think there's good value in explaining, the route and the journey that you took, right? Because anyone can emulate it, right? Like, majority of people that live in the GTA have bought some sort of a principal residence that, maybe they're not house hacking, right? But they're renting out and they're living somewhere else and, all kinds of different things. And then they look at this cash flowing market like Windsor, they buy something there and then they kind of stuck, right? So now we're talking about you liquidated that first property, which like I've sold off every property that I bought like up until 2019, I think. So anything before 2019, I think I've already sold it off, right? So a lot of people go through this journey. So yeah, keep going, man. I'm curious to hear property number 3. And, we say property number 3, but your first property was a 3 units, right? Which is the equivalent of like buying 3 single family houses. And this next property is
a 4plex.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the next property is a 4plex. And to like by this time, right, I realized buying 1 unit didn't make sense from the risk point of view, right? Being empty. So I was looking into Sudbury and the like Windsor, but and I was talking to my coach all the time about it. And at that point, my coach is like Michael Walsh. He invests in Niagara region, so he he hooked me up with my realtor there. He said, why don't you talk to him? He's a new upcoming realtor up there. So I spoke to him, and he has a really dedicated work schedule when it comes to working on MLS, right? So as soon as a deal hits MLS, he just sends it out to all the people who are really interested or who work with him. So he just, I think at that point he was not in this country.
Okay. Yep.
So he sent out the deal to me, and then I liked the numbers, right? It was listed for 400, a 4-unit, like purpose built, really big.
This is Sean, isn't it? It's Sean.
Yeah,
right?
it's Sean.
Yeah.
Sean,
yeah.
So like it's a really big lot, right? To say that. And I did not see like all my properties except the Brampton one. I closed on them before going and seeing them. So he got somebody to walk through it. We did not see a lot in the walkthroughs, but then we were able to put inspection clause in there, which is what I love. I don't care if I'm not able to see it as long as an inspector is able to see and inspect it. So we put an inspection clause in there. And at that price range, we knew the property would have some issues, right, in it. We went at 440 just to kill all the competition. We knew that people would have to come at that price if they want to compete with us.
Yeah.
And that's it, right? We went with an inspection clause.
So let me just add one thing there, right? So the inspection clause, because you're an investor that's long distance, right? So
yeah.
This is a part that I think a lot of people don't understand is we're not going out and looking at every single property we make an offer on, right? Because then if you go with that route, you can only make an offer on, I don't know, one property a week, one property every like 2-3 weeks, right? Because like how often are you going to go all the way to Niagara or all the way to Windsor or Sudbury, right?
Yeah.
So every single offer that I make, maybe 80% of the time is always conditional on give me 3 days. That's all I need. 3 days for an inspection. I'll get my inspector in there. And as much as possible, I try to coordinate those 3 days so I can get a weekend in there, right? And then if it's a weekend and if I'm not doing anything, I'll just quickly drive up there and like check it out, right? But the important part is you only go and check it out once you have it under contract, right? Because like time is super valuable, right?
And similar things, right? Like by this time, right, it has been 2 years of learning, right? So I had learned to look at pictures, learn to do my analysis and just be confident on my knowledge of looking at pictures, right? Like initially I had the fear of what if they are just putting good pictures, right? I don't care now. I have an inspection clause. Even if they're putting good pictures, the inspector is going to catch few things in there, right? And again, the price generally tells you the story, right? Fourplexes are selling for 500 plus. If somebody has listed it for 400, is willing to sell for 450. Obviously, there are issues that are worth like 50,000.
Yeah. Fair. As long as they leave a little bit of the meat on the table for you as well to reap the benefits from, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like it's a win-win scenario. You're taking over his headache. You get a solid deal and you get rewarded for the work you do, right? That's a big important part. So tell me about the fourplex. So you bought it at 440, you said?
Yeah, so we put an offer at 440 with the inspection. So we bought it from somebody who was like really old. He was selling 2 fourplexes. Okay. We had a condition of inspection the other guy did not have. The other fourplex was smaller than ours. That got sold for 450 and we got for 440 with an inspection. We did our inspection. Everything that we could see, right? The windows were old, the roof was bad, something that you could just walk to the property and see.
Yeah.
We just gave it in writing to him in an inspection report and we said we want like 40,000 off just to see if he caves, right? He said, no, but what I'll do is I'll give you like 20 off. I'm like, okay, like not $400 bad. And getting like a 20,000 off, right?
Yeah.
And on something that you can see as you walk to the property. But that's the thing, right? Like we got it for 420 with 4 units. All the units were under rented. So we close on it and that's it, right? Like once we got the property, I had to just work on my way of getting all the tenants out because the property was really under rented. The funny part is financing for this, right? So let me tell you the financing story of it. So by looking at the pictures, the videos, right? We knew the property was in rough shape, but people were living there, right?
Yeah.
So you think if people are living, the lenders will lend to you, right?
Like, it's So what the A lenders look for is it in livable condition? But yes, you're relatively correct in that if people are living there, it's in livable condition. Now, some people will live in some pretty messed up scenarios, right?
So I didn't know that, right? I didn't know that. So I just thought, okay, I had my standard bank that I go to. I have my mortgage broker there. So I just went to him. He looked at it. He put an appraisal out, and he got like the lowest he got was 480, and he was like,
Okay.
yeah, the pictures look like really bad, but yeah, you got it for 420, so it doesn't make like people are living
Like,
there.
it's fine. Yeah.
It's fine, right? We'll lend to you. Then the file goes to underwriter, and a week before, my mortgage agent calls me up and says, hey, the underwriter has problem with the appraiser's comments. The owner has told him that the issues in the building, like there were some water leakages here and there, the roof was bad, so many things, right?
Owner just screwed you.
The seller has told him the issues are there forever,
Yeah.
and nobody, like, he did not get the time to fix it, so the bank is not willing to lend you 80% loan to value.
Okay.
So I'm like, what are you telling me? Like in like 2 months before my closing, 2 days before my closing, and I because my money was sitting there for like a long time, right? So I had like 25 days closing time. So, and I knew like property is livable condition, like people are living there. So I had like A lenders will lend to me. At that time, A lenders were taking like 25 days. So I said, it's a good deal, and I know the property is undervalued. So I see no problem for a lender to give me a mortgage, right?
Yeah.
And 2 days before the closing, I was running left and right. Like I was calling him again and again. What is the problem? Talk to the appraiser. I'll fix it. I'm taking to fix the property, and I was doing that. So he was like, okay. So the worst case is they will lend to you. First, they were not lending to me, but then they said they will lend to you if you give them a few quotes, right, of the few renovations that they want to be gone. So, like, I had to find individuals who could give me quotes in one day, right? All contractors would be, no, I need to look at it. I'm like, no, I don't want you to do those for me.
Yeah.
I just want a quote, and that is like a weird part, right? Like, if you don't have a network,
relationship. Yeah.
So John from Blackjack, right? He was really good, and he really helped me there. He just said, oh, I understand what you're going through. So let me do this. Let me send out a quote tonight, and we'll see what happens, right?
That's amazing. That's amazing service from them. Wow. Kudos to them. Kudos to Blackjack Contracting.
Yeah, so that's why I'm just name dropping them here, because those guys really helped me at that point. If none of the other contractors were willing to give me a quote, they gave me a quote right away, and that's it. I submitted it to the bank. I was still fighting. They were saying we'll give you 60% loan to value. At the end, they agreed to like 65. But that happened like 4 o'clock on the day of closing, and my lawyer is the person who will call me 3 days before closing and say, hey, your money has not come in yet. So which is like, it never comes in 3 days before closing.
It's like, you'd be happy if it comes in 24 hours. If not, it's going to be the day of, right? Cool. Yeah. So wait, so you had the extra cash to cover the shortfall, I'm assuming, from the sale?
Yeah. So I had the money to do the renovations, right? Extra 50,000 that I was looking to put into renovations. So I had that money. So I was like, no worries. Even if at 65%, I will close it. But just close the deal for me, right? But my mortgage agent was, no, I'll get him at 70. That's what he said.
Right.
It did not happen. It happened at 65. I had the money. I just closed on it. So that's how we did it. And like, that's a funny story, right? The lawyer was calling me at 12 o'clock and he's saying, hey, I will not close it today because you're too late for today's closing. Because he likes to work on time, right? I was like, give me 1 more hour. And after 1 hour, again, I was like, give me 1 more hour. At 3, he was just pissed. He just was like, because if you ask for an extension, it's like $1,000 more. You don't want to give, like, you're already giving like 20% to the bank. You don't want to give that extra 1,000. And I was shouting at my mortgage agent. I'm like, it's okay. Close at 60%. I'm okay, right? I don't want to pay the $1,000 penalty. And at 4 o'clock, I was able to get the money. We were not able to do the title transfer the same day, but like we were pretty much able to do it without like $1,000 penalty. I think we were
Yeah.
charged like $300. Yeah.
Yeah, which is a pretty standard, like, you know, the extension, like I've given people, like if I'm selling a flip and someone needs an extension, I'm like, fine, like if it's a day or two, like I'd rather just this deal closes, right? And like we have no problem. Some people, like it's usually when the seller is pissed and they regret that they sold the property, that's when you're in trouble, right? Because then they'll do anything possible. They'll say no extension. If you can't close, you can't close, the deal is dead, right? And that's where you're in trouble. But most sellers, once you see the money coming in, you're like, I'd rather wait a day than have to wait like 3 months and try and resell this again, right? So yeah, man, that's all. And you know what I really want to talk to you about is, so you bought this property fully tenanted, right?
Yes.
So then what was your game plan? Because like now you can't really BRRRR it.
So the idea was like I had prepared myself to get rid of few of the tenants right away. I didn't knew which ones. I was just gonna go there, do like talk with them and see who would agree for cash for keys, right? The good part was Austin got an 8plex at the same time, and he was putting out stories of cash for keys at the same time. So I was piggybacking on his knowledge of how to do it.
Gotcha. How did you do it? Because that's probably one of the main questions I get asked quite a bit. What did your cash for keys negotiation strategy look like?
So the first week, as soon as I closed in, I went to meet them the first weekend, and I just spoke to them. The first thing I did was, just go there and ask them how they feel living in the property, right? If the property is bad, 99% of the time they're gonna say we don't like it, right? So my tenants, let me tell you the tenant profile. So that will help you understand like different strategies. So one guy was living there for 10 years. He never opened a window, smoked like hell, had dead cats in there. He didn't realize.
Dead cats?
Yeah, he didn't realize he had dead cats.
Oh, no.
So the house, you could not stand there for like a minute. He used to work night shifts. So he used to sleep in the day. I was not able to get hold of him. The other guys had moved in just recently. They were a couple with a kid. They didn't like the place. The landlord had, like he just got them in there and just was making sure that his unit is not vacant, right? So they didn't like it either. The roof was like literally, you could say the building did not have a roof, that kind of thing, because every unit was getting water from the roof, even the ground floor units.
Okay. Yeah.
So then there was one more guy who was living there for 13 years. He was maintaining unit really good. He redid the floors, he redid the paints and everything self, because he was paying 480, right? He was like,
okay.
I would do anything but not leave the place, right?
Yeah.
And then there was a drug addict in there who had like, he did not have walls. He removed all the drywalls. Like he punched them. I think you saw a few of my stories. Yeah. He had like knife throwing events there. He had a machete there, everything, right? So the first week I went there, I just spoke to 2 tenants, and I thought at least the guy who was maintaining his own unit, he did not have the problem with the unit, but with the property, just because he was living next door to a drug addict. Mm-hmm. The other guys, they had problem with the unit. The third guy I was not able to speak to, and drug addict, I didn't even meet him like till very late kind of thing. So the next week, then I thought, okay, now I have the list of problems. At the same time, I was not able to get property insurance. So I got an insurance. They came in, they inspected. They just rejected, saying it's too risky for us to insure the property.
No.
So I just used it to my advantage. I just went back and I said, you know what, guys, I'm not able to get property inspection insurance. At the same time, you're not happy with the property. So why don't I do this, right? At that time, I was able to speak to all the 3 tenants, right, except the druggy guy. So I just went in. I said, you know what? I'm not able to get property insurance. At the same time, you're not maintaining the unit, or the landlord has not maintained it for you. And it's literally falling apart, right? Like the guy who was living there in the stink, he was like, he's not opening a window. So you could literally see webs in his, in his place, right? And he was smoking non-stop. So I just went in, I just said, you know what, I'll give you 2 months of rent. Why don't you leave? He said yes.
Nice.
So the next guy, I went to the family, the couple, right? I said, I'll give you 2 months of rent. you just leave. And they started shouting back at me. They said like, you know what, I'm calling my lawyer, this and that. And I just gave them the papers, like the cash for key agreement, and that's it. I said, you know what, you call anyone you want, you show this document. If you feel it's illegal, let me know. I just left, and then I went and spoke to the third guy, and everyone I told the same thing. You have like end of day to sign it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the third guy. I said the same thing, like you have end of day to sign it. That guy is a funny story. We'll come back to that. Then I went to the druggy guy. He was hammered, and that was the first time I went into unit. So he got unconscious some time back, and they changed his lock, and he did not give the keys to the landlord, basically. So we could not even get into his unit, and he had a barricaded system in there. What it means is you can have the key, but if he's inside, he'll barricade it. Like the old Roman, they will have those 4x2s right in there. Yeah,
the multiple locks, basically.
No. He had like a big barricaded systems. In old movies, you would see, right, they would have big doors and they would put in the barricades behind the door so nobody could enter.
Yeah, so that basically, like, people must have, like, his druggy friends are probably trying to like break in. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So I got into his unit. He was fully hammered. I spoke to him and I was like, hey, you cannot live like this. And I was in shock. That was my first time seeing a unit in such a bad shape. I was a bit scared, right? To be honest. Right?
Yeah. For sure, man. For sure. Yeah.
But I hold on to my nerves and I was like, hey, you cannot live so bad. The good part was my voice did not stammer, right? Yeah. So he was like, what do you mean? I'm like, what do you mean? I mean the holes in the walls, the fridge being literally open and not closing the door of the fridge.
Yeah.
Right? And then 2 feet of garbage in each and every room. I mean that. And he was, and I did not let him speak, right? I did not let him give explanation. I just went ahead and said, you know what, you need to leave. And this is the deal I'm giving you. Either I'm calling the cops on you or, getting you thrown out, or you take the 2 months of rent and you just leave. And he just agreed. And he's like, where should I sign? So signing is not it doesn't mean they will go, right? So he just signed and I was like, okay, at least now I have a proof that he will leave. The worst case is I'll take him to LTB.
Yeah.
So then the funny story is the guy I said, right? The guy who was living there for 480, he said, you come back in the evening, I'll sign it. I went back in the evening and he's gone. I waited outside the apartment for like 2 hours for him to show up. He stopped picking up my calls from that day. And that was a shock to me. He was all nice. I thought I was giving a fair deal. To him, I gave like more money than everybody else because 2 months of rent was not good enough for him, right?
Yeah.
But he still did not, he was not cooperating. And I got a bit scared as to what if he lives in there. But again, right, it was not like a worst case scenario. Your mind just plays games with you. But I kept on working on it, right? Like, and then what are my next option? I thought of serving him an N13. That means I need the unit back in 4 months for renovations, right? Mm-hmm. And that's it, right? Like then I served him an N4. Like he would not pick up my calls, right? Everybody else was not supposed to pay me rent because they had 2 months to leave. And those 2 months, I just did not collect rent for those 2 months. So they just have to leave at the end of those 2 months. He was supposed to pay me rent because he has not signed the cash for keys. And he would not call me for rent. He would not reply to my calls for rent. So I would just drop an N4 for being late on the rent.
Yeah.
And like after 1.5 months, I finally caught him in the building, right, while collecting rent. And he was shouting at me. He's like, you're dropping a lot of, forms, this and that. And I'm like, yeah, because you're not picking up my calls. You're not replying to my text messages. So I'm like, so at this point, right, I had made up my mind that he's going to be in the unit because everybody else had signed the cash for key agreement. Again, I was pretty confident I would have trouble.
Still pretty happy. Like three out of 4 units becoming vacant. This guy's probably, he's a pretty good tenant for the most part.
Yeah, he is.
Being dirt cheap, but I'm sure your numbers are still pretty solid, right? So
yeah.
So what happened? So he ended up agreeing to leave or no?
Yeah, so he was really pissed. And I said, you know what? During the renovations, I still don't have insurance. I had insurance, but I said, I still don't have insurance to cover you. in those renovations. So you have to, either be somewhere else while the renovations are happening. I cannot guarantee there would be light, because again, I was doing the electricals. I was not sure about the plumbing because it was behind the walls, right? So I told him all this and he was like, I don't care what you're doing. I'm leaving. And I was like, are you serious? I was really happy inside, but I did not show. And then I was really happy for 15 minutes, right? So it clouded my judgment, and then he just left. And as soon as he's left, I did not get the N11 like the cash for key agreement signed.
Yeah.
Damn, right? So at the end of the thing, August 1st, I go in there. Everybody has left except the druggy guy. This guy has also left, but he has not given back the keys and he has not signed the cash for key agreement, right? So I call him. I say, you have to come back, give me the keys and sign the agreement. So he comes to me and he says he has not yet decided whether he's going to come back or not. Because they have the option to come back, right? I have served him an N13, which means he can come back. He just cooperated, emptying it earlier than requested. I'm like, damn, again, I have to fight that part. But 2 weeks later, he just texts me saying that, you know what, if you pay me this amount of money, like 2,500, I leave. I was paying him 2,000.
You run over there with the money at that point. Same night, same day. Let's do this. Don't change your mind tomorrow, right?
So as soon as he just sent me that message, rather than doing anything, it's like, okay, that's it. When do you want to meet, right? And that's it, right? He came in, he signed, and he left. So the problem was on August 1st, I go there, the druggy guy is still in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm really pissed, right? I'm really pissed because by that time, everybody in the neighborhood knew that I'm getting all my tenants out. My building is like, the famous building on the street because of two reasons. People who come and buy drugs from him and people who don't like people buying drugs from him, right?
Right.
So that's it, right? Like, so everybody's coming up to me and saying, hey, he has not left, right? Like, you need to push him out. And that got me like really angry. Like, he took the money, he's not leaving.
Yeah.
I started banging his door like crazy. And I knew he's inside. Like, people have told me, if he's inside, you knock his door, he never opens. And that's the reason I was never able to meet him. He never opens. I tried it for 15-20 minutes, continuously banging the door. He did not open. I just went, because I knew that the trade with that thing was like every 5 minutes there were people coming up to his door. So I just stood aside 5 minutes. Somebody came in. He just used his standard knock, which makes him open the door. As soon as the door was open, I was in. I was like, dude, you need to be out by today. And he started throwing all his tantrums, right? Like every trick they can use against you, right? But I just did not cave. By that point, I had like really good confidence in myself. I just did not cave. I was like, what is your problem? So the worst thing at the end, the last thing that he came up was, I don't know how to move. I don't have people to move. I don't know. So I said, you know what? I'll pay you the moving cost. Get out of the unit by the noon. So that's what he did, right? Like, he did not take all his garbage, right? Like, he had like ton of shit, but I ended up still paying for his moving and throwing his garbage, but he was out, right?
Where did he go?
There's another house that does the same thing. So he just went in there, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing, right? And I really hate this part about Ontario, right? Like, like the cops were there at my building. They were saying, like, I cannot say what they were saying, but they were like, they knew everything, like most of the things, right? Like, they know what's happening. They know things around, but that's the problem, right? Like, we need to work things out, right? There are legal procedures that they have to abide by, even though they have signed documents. If they don't want to leave, they just don't want to leave, right? Regardless of 100%. Being a drug addict or not, or being whatever kind of person, if somebody decides they don't want to leave, even you paying them, you run into problems, right? But the good part was I showed more confidence than him at that point in time, and I just threw him away at 4:00, just bolted the whole building, and that's it for that day.
That's dope, man. That's quite the journey you've been on. And the one thing I'll say is, like, throughout your journey, I think there's been multiple instances where you're faced with a hurdle, and it's just about like, how do you overcome it, right? And the longer you stay in this journey, the more shit you're going to see and the more crap you're going to be dealing with. And it never really, the one thing that I will tell you is you eventually just become immune to it, right? You're
And
just like,
I
all
I
right,
have
like,
become
I guess
I
he's not
have
leaving. I guess like whatever, like it is what it is. They're going to deal with it now, right? So you just become more and more immune to it, right?
Yeah, with
Um,
every deal, right, I have become immune to one thing, right? The first deal I have become immune to tenants. The second deal I have become immune to renovations. That your budgets are gonna go wacky, right? You
yeah.
end up you need to be prepared for renovations. The third one was like everything would go wrong.
Yeah.
Just
Like
don't.
delayed closing now is just going to be like, okay, like delay it a day if you have to. Like it's just whatever.
So the Brampton property that I sold, right? I gave them 2.5 months to close, and they took 21 days extension multiple times, right? Like they took like 7 days. So that's the kind of things, right? Everything will go wrong. And the good part was I had put in an offer in Sudbury 10 days after my closing of Brampton.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
good thing is it did not get accepted.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
Cool, man. So that sounds great, Dhiraj. I think there's a lot of kind of insight that you kind of shared there. And I think it was just fun, like nice kind of talking about the different struggles and hurdles that you've overcome, right? So generally at this part of the podcast, we kind of like to ask our guests 3 questions, right? So the first question is, where are we going to be seeing you 5 years from now? Like, what's your goal? What's your vision 5 years down the road?
I I just I don't have a really good answer for that. I would just say doing the same thing, right? Like working my day job and trying to build my real estate portfolio, right? I really want to move into multiple units, right? Multifamily properties. Maybe pick
So
a few.
do you like your day job?
Not really, but that's I need a day job, right? What I have realized, if I have more time free,
Yep.
I just end up wasting it. But if I have
your productivity drops, right? Yeah. I tell people this all the time. It's either I'm at 120% productivity or I'm at like 30% productivity. There's no in between here.
Yeah, I may end up changing my day job, like doing something else, but I will at least have 2 jobs, right? Like a real estate being one job or one thing, and then something else, right? It's just helps you take your mind off one shit if you are dealing with something in one of
100%, man. I agree entirely with you. So let me ask you the second question then. If you had $10 million today, what would you do with it? You can't spend it all on real estate.
Yeah, so I really have a good answer for that, I think. So I would like to buy a boat and just go around the world, just sailing.
That's deadly, man.
Like
what if you die? I don't know if I'd go for a boat. A plane would be cool.
No, so I have seen like on YouTube, I have seen a lot of couple do that. They just gave up their life.
Yeah.
And it's people from IT. I am in IT as well, right? So they just got fed up with their day job. They're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just buying a boat and sailing the world. So I would like to do that. $10 million really helped me with that, right? Like I don't have to worry about working on the boat if it breaks down or something, right? So just
100%, man. That's awesome.
And if I have enough money left, right, I would also buy an island.
Yeah? Oh, you're an island guy. That's very cool. It's a little bit of a different answer from what we normally get. So, the last question is, if you could have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would you choose and why?
I really want to have like 2 peoples together. One is dead and one is alive. Like I would like to sit on a table with Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and just let them talk about their life journey, right? I would ask those same questions to them and see how they answer. They did similar kind of things, but their methods were different, right? So I just want to know the contrasting of it, right? I just like to be in that room.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's pretty cool actually to see both of them together. All right, Dhiraj, I think that was a great episode. For anyone that wants to kind of get connected with you, follow along your journey, and just build relationships with, which you're definitely like pretty big on relationships, right? How can they go about finding you and connecting with you?
So I'm on Instagram with Invest with Patil. That's my handle. And then on Facebook, I'm with my name like Dhiraj Patil. And I really like to connect with people, right? Being an immigrant, I have learned this, right? You need to know people. You need to build that network. So I just want to help others do the same thing that I'm doing.
100%, man. I think this was a great episode. I think Just looking back, like a lot of the stuff that you talked about is things that I definitely dealt with like earlier on in the journey. So I just brought back a lot of memories, and hopefully, our listeners are going through very similar journeys and they're kind of all at the same hurdle, right? And you're definitely a great guy to get connected with, super humble. And so congrats on getting the 7 units. I'm sure you're going to, get so many more. Austin is way better at doing these exits than me, but guys, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Make sure you, subscribe to the podcast, leave a comment if you enjoyed it. Shoot Dhiraj a message on Instagram. Once again, that's invest with
Patil.
Patil or EL?
Yeah, TIL.
TIL, right? Okay, I had a feeling. Cool, guys, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.